Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, and today I'm doing my February wrap up. I had a pretty split month with some good and some not so good books. I unfortunately did not actually meet my goal of reading all the books I wanted to get to in March, but that's okay because we're all just going at our own pace here, and February was a short month. But anyways, let's just jump right into it with my first books. If you've watched if you watch any of my wrap up or TBR videos for the year of 2021, you'll know that I'm reading through the D and Angel series. This is an older manga, a reread for me. And this is volumes 5 and 6. So I'm actually almost out of the volumes that I have. I have all the way up till 8. And I have not been having the greatest result with these. I mean, these are middle grade, but they definitely don't hold up. I haven't read these since middle school or high school. If you need more explanation about what it's kind of about, I definitely go into it way more in my other videos. Essentially, it's just about a boy who, when he has feelings of his love interest, he turns into a phantom thief, like a completely different persona that's separate from his own, but they both live inside the main character's head. That's the main character right there, Daisuke, and this is the other character, Dark. So these ones, the first 4 books haven't been that great. They've been slowly getting better. The main things bringing them down is just really cheesy and inappropriate things that just haven't held up, weird, a lot of sexual harassment, oddly enough, and the love interest being super annoying. Well, in these volumes, we kind of get Daisuke in a more healthy and positive relationship. It's also kind of all on this tropical island, which is a fun place to go to. And then we also kind of get more into Dark's backstory, which we haven't really gotten, and how Daisuke feels, or how Daisuke and Dark are connected. We get a little bit more about that. It wasn't super well done though. I feel like it could have been a little bit more impactful, but whatever. So I ended up giving both of those a 4-star, which is better than the other ones because the other ones have either gotten 2 or 3 stars. So after that, I did pick up the 5th and the 6th edition of Full Metal Alchemist and these awesome hardcover Full Metal editions. This series also is really well known. It's about 2 brothers who are pretty much trying to get their lives back. One of the brothers sacrificed his whole body, so he's just a soul living in a suit of armor, and the other brother is a state alchemist who has lost his arm and his leg. It literally cost him an arm and his leg for what they did in the series. So like I said, every single one of these volumes has just been so incredible. It continues to build on the world and the mystery. I am briefly flipping through it because I can't 100% remember. These are one of the first books I read this month. They all kind of blur together as manga sometimes do. But yeah, this one we again get a very interesting new character. Almost every single one of these books brings in a new character, and they all really just stay in your mind. The way they introduce characters is super great. So we do get the introduction of that. And like I said, just more of the mystery kind of built up and revealed. I think this is probably the least emotional of all of them. Most of these books have been pretty emotional, so this one actually doesn't have a lot of that. It really just heavily dives into more of the mystery and a very interesting new antagonist. At least that was the 5th volume. The 6th volume actually brings in, oh, I remember now. The 6th volume is really interesting because it actually brings in a whole nother country. So this is super interesting because it brings in a more Chinese aesthetic to this European landscape, and they actually do alchemy differently. I believe we also address the death of one of the past characters, which is really emotional, so we get that. We also go back and wrap up some of the loose ends from the earlier novels and the earlier volumes, and it's just so good. It just continues to mount and get so amazing. Just the characters, the mystery of the whole world. It's fantastic. Okay, so that is it for my mangas for the month. We are going to the first novel I read in February, and this is Timekeeper by Tara Sim. I really wish I could have liked this book. It's an romance. It's set in an alternative Victorian London where time is basically controlled by these clocks, or I guess they're more managed by these clocks. So different cities around this landscape, this world, have these clock towers that control and manage time. And they have these people, or they have these mechanics that can essentially sense or have a very close connection to time. And so they go to fix clocks and stuff like that. And our main character, he is one of those mechanics. and he slowly basically starts to develop a relationship with a clock spirit who, it's been rumored that clock spirits exist, but no one really knows about them, or at least think it's just kind of like a fairy tale or something like that. I gave this just about a 2 or a 3, I don't remember. I didn't rate it super highly. The main problem I had with it is, one, I feel like the initial romance is not healthy. I think it's definitely supposed to be like the carrying point, but essentially, I don't know if I can really spoil it, but basically it's to me, it kind of came off as like a toxic relationship. And if you've read the series and want to talk about it down below, we can go into spoilers, because no one else talks about the way I feel about this relationship, which I thought was interesting. But not only that, but I think another biggest problem is that initially this book actually starts with our main character having already gone through 2 major traumas, and neither of them we as the reader actually lived through. And neither of these traumas really get the attention they deserve, and sometimes they either blend together or are completely separate. It's like, honestly, it's like it's so not focused on or not well paced or developed that to me the 2 traumas kind of seem like one. I feel like they happened at like the same time, the same event, and they did not. So it just wasn't great all around. And then towards the end, the villain is, and I don't know, the motivations and just the way it goes to the villain was just not my cup of tea. But I still have the sequel one. I am interested in the sequel because it actually goes to I believe Egypt, and talks about like how their clock towers work and stuff like that. And I think my problems with the first one are gone, because like he's dealt with the trauma that I had an issue with that I didn't think was well done, and the relationship I think is probably in a more healthy, stable time. So I feel like the sequel should be a lot better. The book I read after that is Peter and the Starcatchers. I was really excited to finally get back to this because this is a reread for me. I read this back in high school. I believe it was the first time I read it. I believe I actually have reread this once before. I think I might have read this in either middle school or high school and then read it again in like early college years or something like that. Essentially, this is a retelling of Peter Pan. What this does, and I really enjoy, is that it gives a reason behind a lot of the Neverland and Peter magic. So I guess that's actually one thing you like from the original, is just like the whimsy and unexplainable magic to it, and you probably won't like this one because this does give like a reason why things are happening. So it does ground the story a bit more, and I actually really like that. I like having a reason behind some of the reasons that the stuff is happening. I also think that Peter is not as much as a jerk in the original. I actually just for the first time read the classic in January, and I did not 100% like it. I also feel like Peter was kind of a jerk, which kind of makes sense because that's why I feel like a lot of media or stories nowadays make Peter Pan to be the bad guy, because it kind of makes sense. And this one, he's definitely not. It does get rid of a bit of that edge that Peter's supposed to have, because he is more of the heroic, selfless type, but that's kind of my type of character, so I liked it. I don't think he's as interesting as the original Peter Pan, but I still like this Peter Pan more. So yeah, this is a really fun adventure. It's not up to Wendy yet. It is kind of supposed to be like a prequel, I think, to Wendy. Again, this is how Neverland started and everything. Really small thing I want to actually point out is I like how it's not us versus them when it comes to the adults. I think it's actually a big problem with the first book as well, is they kind of made all the adults seem bad and all the kids seem selfish or whatever. This one merges them really well together. So there's obviously antagonists that are adults, but there's also adults that help them, and the adults aren't useless. So I really appreciated that they do have strong adult and parental figures here that the kids can go to and rely on. I feel like that's usually a bad trope with young adult novels, is they sort of just push parents out of the way, and they're either useless or they're bad. It's just really refreshing. It's really nice to see. So I really enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to the second one. I think there's like 4 total. I've read the first 3, but not in a really long time. That's why I reread the series. I've never read the 4th one. So this was a really good start again. I'm glad it held up, and I did give it 5 stars, I'm pretty sure. So the book I read after that is Star Wars: The High Republic Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. This is the sequel to The Light of the Jedi, which is the first book in the High Republic series. I actually did a whole dedicated review to Light of the Jedi and the High Republic and what's kind of going on with it, my whole opinions on it. So go check that out if you're interested. I probably won't be doing a dedicated review for this one, but I really like this one. I thought it was a really good sequel. After reading Light of the Jedi, I was concerned how they were going to continue the High Republic series. You know, where were they going to go with it? How are the Jedi going to play out and everything like that? I think a lot of people will like this one, especially if in the first one you felt like you didn't have enough characters to latch onto, or that you didn't get enough time with characters. This is definitely a very, I don't know if it's character driven novel, but you definitely get, it's definitely character heavy. You get a couple different characters. They each have their own backstory and motivations and challenges, and it's really good. It's really good how they work it out. This is also, I almost don't know if this is technically the second in the series. I think it might be 1.5 or something like that, because this actually takes place before, in the middle, and after the first book. So if you read the first book, then some of the stuff will be familiar here. If you don't read the first book, then you're gonna get spoiled for it. But I really like this one, especially the main character. The main character is, well, I say main character, but it goes through all the point of views. But you can kind of tell it focuses on one in particular, and that is the Padawan Wreath Silas, I believe is his name. And he is a different Jedi than we've actually really encountered. So his master wants him to go off and explore the Outer Rim, which is kind of like the Wild West of the universe or the galaxy. And he doesn't want to. He actually wants to stay on Coruscant, which is the main city-like planet, and just kind of work in the archives and do knowledge things and stuff like that. And we don't really get that from Jedi. You know, I feel like we always, when we hear Jedi, we think of them, we think adventurous and really powerful and just like a go-getter and stuff like that. So what's interesting to see a Jedi who isn't like that and see how he manages when he goes out to the edge of the galaxy and stuff like that, and how he changes, how he interacts with other people. And yeah, it was really good. I think the third book is going to have him in it, but I don't think he's going to be a main character just because, like I said, he is like a Padawan and stuff like that. But it was really good. It was a really great follow-up to the High Republic series. So the book I read after that is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Yes, I finally got to this. I'm probably one of the last people that did. So I'm sure everyone already knows what this is. But this is a grimdark story. I think famously just known for its characters. Like, I think it's well known that this doesn't have a super dynamic plot or really focuses on the plot. For me, I kind of just gave it a solid 3. I thought it had some very visceral scenes, especially one where I was like, I started shaking at one of the scenes. It was so bad. It was like really terrible. But hey, it made me feel something, and that's good. So that's pretty much all I really have to say about this. I did, however, I'm really not a fan of like these kind of covers, and since I was going to continue the series, and I know they are everywhere, I also got the box set. So I really like these editions. I've seen them on like a lot of people's shelves. I really like the color. Like, I like the white with the silhouetted black characters and the splash of color. And they're also a lot bigger than I thought they were. Like, these are a lot bigger than I thought they were. And also the texture is kind of different. So this is really cool. I knew if I was going to continue the series, I wanted these ones. I really hope I still like the series though, or else I just would have bought 3 books that I plan on selling. Anyways, so hopefully the second and the third one go a lot better than the first one. And finally, the last book I read in March is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. And I really, really want to like this book. Honestly, this basically put me in a reading slump. I don't know if everyone's reading slump definition is the same. I think most people think a reading slump is maybe you're just not reading anymore after that. This kind of put me in a reading slump because I just didn't want to read. I still pushed through and read it, and I'm still happily reading now that I'm done. But pretty much when the end of February came around, I knew I still had to get to this. I had so much of it left, and it was just dragging on. I literally did not read my manga, because my mangas I really can read in one day, but I knew I was like, I have to only focus on this book, or I'm not going to finish it by the end of February. That's like one thing I'm really picky on, is maybe I'm not so picky on how many books I finish and keeping to my TBR, but I do want to make sure I like start and end a certain amount of books within a month. I don't like to be halfway through a book when the end of the month comes around. That's just how I am. Anyway, so back to this book. Winter's Orbit is about it's kind of set in a space opera sort of thing. I mean, it's nowhere near Earth. We don't mention Earth. Everyone is a human though, and we're a completely different like system of like I think it's actually 7 planets total, and they're all like different. We really don't get too much world building in on this at all. The main planet, I think it's like, oh, I don't even remember now. I just keep calling it the Empire. The main planet's called like the Empire. They're the ones that rule everyone else's. It is a like snowy winter planet. So Winter's Orbit is about it starts us off with a couple, 2 men. This is a very also like no gender, or like this pretty much has like no barriers when it comes to gender and sexuality. So like there's lots of same sex, or I think there's actually even like a non like binary character and stuff like that. It's not even like an issue. So anyway, so it starts with 2 men who are married together. They're partners. One is a military officer from the Empire, and the other one is from like one of the side planets. And he ends up dying before the book has started, and he immediately has to be married to a new character from the Empire, and those are like our 2 main characters is Kim, I think it's like Kim, from the Empire, and Janin from Thean, and Thean is the other planet. So basically they are forced into this romance and this marriage based on politics, which is kind of interesting, because again, you don't really see that with LGBT couples, so that's cool. It's not an issue. It's like, hey, we just need a relationship between these 2 planets, and these 2 men are fine. So pretty much the first half of the book is basically the 2 characters are miscommunicating. That's like probably the frustrations with this book, is that it's a big miscommunication trope. The first half of the book is essentially both the characters trying to figure out the other one and thinking that the other one doesn't like them. So that happens, and then this isn't really a spoilers, because as you should know, if this is a romance novel where it's a miscommunication trope, you know at some point they have to get together. So about halfway through the book, that part happens. It has that whole like, we have to force to sleep in the same bed kind of trope. I think that's like literally the name for it. Or essentially they have to do something together due to their circumstances, and it ends up making them realize their feelings for each other. So that part happened, and then you would think, okay, cool, so the miscommunication is over with, so that means I should like the rest of the book. Except I really didn't, because the end of the book just really dragged. It kind of goes back into this political conspiracy like plot that I really didn't care for, that was really dragged out in the first book, because you don't know if the husband that had died, if he was actually murdered, or who murdered him, and just stuff like that. It also talks about these things called remnants, which are briefly talked about in the first half of the book. You have no idea what they are. They're just really weird and apparently randomly discovered by the planets. And every 20 years when they have to go over their, essentially like, the easiest way to compare it to is Star Wars. So I hope you guys have seen Star Wars. But essentially like the entire galaxy is ruled by like, or is usually ruled by the Republic. And they are like a system of planets, but they're kind of separate. It's sort of like that, and basically for this system to still remain part of that republic, they have to basically re-sign a treaty and hand over all their remnants. Then the remnants kind of come back later in the book, and it's not really clear like what they can do, and it just gets super deep, and I'm just like, I'm over it. I ended up giving it 3 stars, and that's actually just because I really enjoyed the 2 main characters. So I know that sounds like a lot of negatives and a lot of complaints, but Kiem and Janin are actually really good, especially Kiem. He's one of my favorites. He's essentially what would happen if, you know, all like your straight friends that acted like douches back in middle school and high school and college, but you're still their friend because you know they're nice really on the inside. And what happens like when they grow up and they realize that they're being dumb all through school and stuff like that. That's how Kiem is. He's just like, he's really fun and charismatic, but he also has that like that sordid past that he has to kind of deal with. And yeah, and then Janin, he clearly, you can kind of tell as we'll learn more about Janin that his past isn't all what it seems. He clearly had some troubled backstory, but he's really respectful and gracious the way he is, since he's essentially like married into this like empire, and he has to sort of treat people a certain way and just stuff like that. So yeah, Janen and Kiam are really good characters. For the most part, the relationship is pretty cute when they're not miscommunicating. So that's all I'm really gonna say. And I was, because even by the end, like the climax of the book, I really didn't care for. I just wanted to get the climax over with and be done. But then the actual ending, like, you know, like the last 2 chapters, we were like getting all the happy endings and blah, blah, blah. I really just wanted to see the 2 characters like fly off to a planet and get like a whole little novella about them. I already looked into if there's going to be a sequel or not. And the author apparently wrote that she's doing a sort of sequel, but she's writing it like a completely different characters in a different part of the universe. So I'm like, that's really not what I wanted. So yeah, that was unfortunately like a 3-star read for me. So yeah, those are all the books I read in February. So here we are. I'd say I read about 7 or so, just because usually with the manga I kind of count them as one book or like no books because they're so small, they take a little time. So I'd say I read about 7 books in February, which is pretty good. And now if you watched my January wrap up, I did want to start doing these sort of mini TBRs. The reason why I feel like mini TBRs really work for me is because whenever I get in new books, I really like to actually read the first chapter before I put them on my shelf. So I think it kind of really, it's good because I kind of expose like new books and I actually have a little bit more detail about how the book kind of starts. And I just think it's sort of fun to talk about. You know, like I ended up reading them, I as well sort of talk about them. I did expose myself in some way to these books, and so I really want to get to them. So without further ado, let's get to my mini TBR. These usually don't count manga or like art books and stuff like that. So when I eventually do my actual TBR, not all of these will be just repetitive. So I'll have a little bit more extra stuff to share at the end of the month. I think I am going to do a quarterly TBR because I did buy a lot these first 3 months. I think there's even more coming. So yeah, we'll see. So we'll go and probably get the most negative book out of the way first. Is I did read the first chapter of The Gilded Ones and purchased The Gilded Ones. I've been really excited for this one. I mean, this cover is really gorgeous. I actually pre-ordered this like last year when it was supposed to come out, like last year. It was supposed to come out like February of 2020. So from what I knew about this book is that it was what I thought was like all African inspired, or at least definitely centered on like African culture. I mean, just look at the cover, you can kind of tell. And that essentially the main character, or the whole world, is kind of set up where if you bleed gold blood, you're basically impure, and so the main character is impure. That's pretty much the most I really knew about it. I just thought the cover was really pretty, and I did want it to, you know, diversify my reading selection. So this came in, and I read the first chapter, and honestly, it was a lot. Basically, the first chapter, this main character, has a lot of heavy backstory. The first of which being that her mother's already dead, so we have a dead parent. And she's poor, so we have people looking down on her because she's poor. And then we have her run into, first, sexism, because this whole story has that trope of where when the women come of age, they have to find a man and marry and have children. And honestly, this is really tiring for me. First off, mainly because I don't see an issue with wanting to have a family and, you know, settle down. I understand that that's a stereotype and something that's assumed of, I mean, honestly, yes, very strongly on women, but usually on younger people in general. You're supposed to find someone, settle down, get a job, white picket fence, whatever. So I definitely understand that being a big thing. I just feel like we've grown away from that. Like, I feel like a lot, I mean, look, there's so many people, there's so many reports and articles and statistics now of basically our generation and younger doing what we want. We just live in apartments by ourselves with our dogs, or just like a couple, and we don't have kids, just stuff like that. It's like, I feel like we've really grown away from that. But I also understand it's still an issue, and it has been an issue, and it's something you can write about to create drama and stuff people really live through. It's just, I would either wish that some people or characters would actually want it or be okay with it. It's just like every single character being presented with this issue, and they're just like, oh, but I don't want to settle down. Like, I want to be my own person, or not locked down, or be an object, or whatever. It's like, I wish there was kind of like a character that was just like, oh, I'm really looking forward to finding a partner in life and not being alone, or, you know, having someone to rely on, just something like that. Or not have the trope at all, just not have that situation where a woman has to marry because she came of age. And that's not even the only issue. So beyond that sexism, we go right into sexual harassment or sexual abuse. Like in broad daylight, she just runs into this guy and he just sexually harasses her. So yeah, that's the thing. Which again, I can see it's an issue that people have to deal with. And it's very real. And then right after that, we also get like mean girl bullying, and also racism too, because she's actually, it's not a full African inspired world, at least maybe not yet. It's where this girl actually grows up in, and she's the only black girl. So there's also racism because she's just surrounded by like white people. So she's treated like an object as an exotic beauty and stuff like that. So it's like it has that whole mixture of sexism and racism, and like sexual harassment, like all mixed in there. And then she meets this mean girl at the store who is just like that typical popular white mean girl. And then her mother comes along and pretends like, or acts like she's gonna help our poor main character, and then just Lucius Malfoy's her, and it's just like, don't associate with those poor people, essentially. She can't help it that she's poor and black, and well, they're all women, so she can't help that she's poor and black. And that's how the chapter ends. The first chapter ends with just downers and many issues we have to deal with. And like, I'm not saying a book can't have all of that, I just don't think it's well written when you just shove it all into the first chapter. Like, none of this was really interesting. The only thing that sets it apart is the fact that you talk about how there's going to be a ceremony where you get cut, and if your blood isn't red, then you're a demon or something like that. So yeah, it just really unsettled me. I hope it's written well. I just don't have a lot of hope when like your first chapter just lays all that out on you without any nuance. I'm just not looking forward to it. But I am still going to try reading it in March, so I'll keep you posted. So let's go ahead and get to actually another book that actually is more fully African inspired, and that is Ray Bearer. And I have this really pretty, I think it's like the Fairy Loot edition. And this is by Jordan Ifueko. And this was super interesting. From what I know about this one is that this is about a girl who is basically trained to go become the Ray Bearer of the prince or the king or something like that. And the Ray Bearer is essentially the closest person to the prince or king or whatever. The girl that is the main character that's supposed to go and be the Ray Bearer is basically sent there and trained to kill him. So in the very first chapter, immediately hooked me because the setting and the mystery and the magic to the world is already like, you know, in our periphery, as we kind of can tell something is not right. The main girl definitely seems very interesting and different, and we actually learn, and literally in the first chapter, that her mother is essentially this woman who coerced a spirit or a genie. Actually, it's really interesting. She coerced a spirit into basically becoming a genie. She like trapped him, and then because she trapped him, he's now a genie, so she has to grant wishes. So obviously she can't wish for people to be dead or for love or whatever, so she wishes for a child that she sort of has control over, which is how we get the main character. So that her mother is this clearly terrible woman who basically forced this genie to have sex with her so they could produce her offspring, who essentially, it sounds like she's going to have to do what her mother says because she's bound by blood and half genie and stuff like that. I'm not too sure. It's already so interesting. It's so interesting. And again, this did some of the issues so well, with really good nuance of like showing that the daughter is clearly not going to have a very good childhood with her mother, that the father was forced into this and is still trying to help her, and it's also in a really interesting world. I got all of this from the first chapter, and it's probably just as long as the Gilded ones. So I'm really looking forward to this. I didn't put it on my March TBR, but I don't imagine I'm not going to get to it anytime soon. Like I said, I love the cover. I actually bought this 90% for the cover because I'm a really big fan of lions, and so I love that. And I think also this cover is only actually available in paperback, but the Fairy Loot edition made it a hardback. So yeah, it was such a good first chapter. We're gonna go back to the negative real quick and talk about Black Canary Breaking Silence by Alexandra Monier. I also really like this cover. I think this cover is really cool. And honestly, that's kind of all it really took. I love the Black Canary. I think she's really cool. She's essentially just a straight up melee fighter with the ability to scream and incapacitate people. What? And it's in the same line as these, they're called, I guess, DC icons. I'm gonna show you here. I'm sure you guys have seen these books. It's basically novelizations of all of these ones. I've seen them. I honestly haven't cared about any of these superheroes really to read them. This is the very first one. So I'm glad I actually don't want the rest of these, because these all have the same kind of covers, and this one is vastly different. Okay, so what is this book about? Because I didn't read what it was about. I assumed it was just, you know, Dinah Lance, aka the Black Canary. I figured it was just her origin story. Well, this is set in an alternative Gotham where, I don't know, it hasn't been revealed yet if Batman ever existed. I don't think so, because it says all the Waynes are dead, and I'm thinking that Batman never actually was created yet. And the Court of Owls, which is actually a book I want to get to this year because there's a game coming out that has the Court of Owls. But the Court of Owls took over Gotham, and they are essentially the dictatorship, but not only a dictatorship, but they are patriarchy. I didn't expect that. Yeah, so this whole book is basically women cannot do anything. They are not supposed to be athletic, and they definitely can't be singers, which can be interesting for Black Widow, because that's literally all she is not all she is, but she's an extremely good martial artist with I don't know if she actually sings. I don't know that much about her, like if she can sing, but the whole thing's with her voice. So yeah, that's definitely a very interesting setup. I was not expecting it. I did not expect, again, to get into this very heavy topic of women being very heavily oppressed. But I'm also far more optimistic because it does not beat me over the head with it. She also does already have some decent amount of athletic training, so it's not like she's completely useless. And I'm interested to see how she gets her power. I think it already sets it up. It does talk about how the Court of Owls, they have sort of like injected with this serum that's supposed to make them stronger, so I'm assuming she's probably going to get that or something. But it's also really interesting because the first chapter talks about how she's trying to break into an old opera house because there are recordings of women singers before Gotham was taken over, and she's never heard a woman sing before. I mean, she technically has. She heard one when she was really little, but she thought she might have imagined it because women are not supposed to sing. So again, just the whole world setup is kind of like, really, like that's what we're going with. But what it's done with it is interesting. I do like the idea of women not having a voice and her power being all about her voice. I think that's super interesting. The sequel to my novel actually has a group like that where it does talk about characters who feel like they were silenced due to their culture or their upbringing, and they don't want to be silenced anymore. So I'm definitely on board. And I'm optimistic. Like I said, it was a bit jarring. I did not realize that was the world that they were creating here, but I'm definitely optimistic. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but it's higher on my TBR. The last book I ended up reading that was actually just today is The Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. And I 100% have to blame Books with Brittany for this, because I watched her February book haul, and when she pulled out this book series, like, they are gorgeous. I actually did get the whole series. So this is the first one. I think it looks so gorgeous. And then this is the second one. And then this is the third one. Like, oh my god. So these are so incredible. So I definitely got them mostly for how amazing the covers are, but also I really liked Laini Taylor's Strange the Dreamer duology. I thought it was so incredible. I just haven't heard a lot of great things about this one. So this has the potential to be one of my most, I guess, regretted buys, because I just bought 3 books out of nowhere. I will actually say, though, I didn't point this out, but I actually got both this set and First Law trilogy on sale. They were actually pretty cheap. I think that they were definitely less than $30, so that's like less than $10 for each book, and I feel like $10 books are a really good price. So I was really happy with it. I'm not super disappointed. It just, again, feels really silly to buy a bunch of books. We don't know how they're going to go. Anyways, so since I bought the book, I have to read the first chapter. That's my thing. And I actually really liked it. So essentially this series is supposed to be something about like gods and angels, I believe. And it talks about how, I guess, people are being marked and stuff starts to happen and go wrong. I'm not too sure. The description wasn't super great. But the first chapter was really nice. Like, it's beautifully written. So if you like flowery writing and really nice prose, I honestly wasn't really paying attention to prose too much when I first read Strange the Dreamer, so I don't know how it compares. But it was just really nicely done. I was like, oh, this is pretty. Like, this is a pretty first chapter. I really like the main character. She has got some spunk, and I liked how she talks about how she pretty much starts getting harassed by her ex-boyfriend, and she's not a complete pushover. He's not overly creepy, and I like the way she's like, oh, well, I still like him, but I know he's a jerk, so stay away from me. So I just liked it. It wasn't anything too crazy. Just the way it set up the world was really pretty. Oh, their names are really nice too. Her name is, oh, I already forgot. Sorry. The jerk's, the ex-boyfriend's name is Casimir, which I think is really cool. So hopefully he's not a complete douche the whole time, because I like his name. And her name is like Karu. K-A-R-O-U. Karu? Karu? So I don't know, it's just little things. I was just like, oh, I really like this one. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this. I hope I like it. It's not like people are gonna be like, oh yeah, you're really gonna love it. Like, the reviews aren't like super positive. So I hope I end up really liking it, because the books look really pretty, and I really enjoyed that first chapter. Alright, so there we go. That is my mini book haul. The books that I got in the month of February and read the first chapter of. So it's really nice. It's a really even split of like 2 really good books and 2 books I'm like kind of on the fence on. That's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have read any of these books. Let me know if your thoughts differed from mine in the books that I actually finished. And if you've read any of the books that I only read the first chapter of, let me know if they should be higher or lower my TBR, and how you enjoyed them. Pretty much in general, just go ahead and have a conversation down below. Let's discuss anything I talked about in this video. And if you want to stay connected outside of YouTube, my Instagram and Goodreads is always linked below. That way we can always stay connected and have some more bookish content discussions. So thank you so much for watching. I think I already said that, so I'm going to hop off now, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.